Hello and welcome to Toy Polloi 2, and in today's video we are looking at nerd vests. As you can see here, these are the three nerd vests that I had. I started off with one nerd vest, which was the one you can see on the back left there, and soon found that I had more patches that I could really sort of fit on it. So I bought myself a second one, which is this one, Nerd Vest version 2. And again, I soon ran out of space on that, so I bought myself a third one, which is Nerd Vest version 3. And I tend to wear these sort of all randomly, depending on what sort of mood I'm in. I've now got a whole selection of new patches and badges, so I thought it was time to do a bit of a sort of upgrade and swap around of what's on some of these nerd vests. So that's what we're going to be doing in today's video. A bit of an update and upgrade on the vests to get them how I want them. So let's get on with the video and I'll show you the new patches that I have. Okay, so you can see here, this is all of the sort of patches and badges that aren't currently on the nerd vests. I get sent a lot, and I've also bought myself a lot, so there's a lot to choose from. I'm trying to make it so that the vests all have different patches and badges on them, that there's no sort of duplication across each vest, and I'm trying to keep them all themed to things that I do here on the channel. So a lot that I have just doesn't actually sort of sit with what I'm doing at the moment. They may get used in future, but at the moment they are sort of in my spares pile of patches and badges. A lot of those are things I've bought myself. You can see here I've got some Star Trek ones that I bought at a toy fair fairly recently. I've got other ones that I've been sent by viewers and fans of the channel. And today what I'm going to do is actually put on this selection here. These are the ones that I sort of picked out of these bags, and these are the ones that I think sort of fit with what I'm doing, and also some that I've been given recently. So this was one that I was sent recently, which is a Return of the Jedi patch. In fact, I got sent two of them. That is obviously very key to what I do here on the channel, so I'd like to fit that one on. On my trip to Japan recently, I met up with Phil Treasures for Trigger, and he gave me this patch, and I like to put on other sort of channels patches onto my nerd vest, so that one is definitely going on. I also met up with Dan Larson from Secret Galaxy, formerly known as Toy Galaxy, and he gave me a couple of pins, and those need to go on the vest because those are particularly cool. I bought a couple of things as well. I found a couple of Gachapon machines that had some Star Wars related pins on them, so I got a couple out of those, and I'm thinking of using one of these on a vest. They're actually fairly heavy, and badges and pins can be a bit of an issue, which I'll talk about in a moment, just because they tend to catch on things. So I only want to put one of those on. And I did happen to find a couple of sew-on patches as well in a haberdashery shop, which I really quite like. We've got a small Rebel emblem there, and we have this small little R2-D2. These are nice size-wise. Often it's hard to put on bigger patches. You run out of space really quickly, and there's a lot of areas on the nerd vest that are sort of small areas, and so small patches like this are particularly good. So I'm hoping to put all of those across the three nerd vests. So let me bring in a nerd vest and I'll show you some of the spaces that I've got to fill, and also some of the issues that I'm having with badges as well, and pins, because they just tend to get in the way. So here is the front of nerd vest number one. As you can see, it's a right mishmash of things. There's a lot of Star Wars on this vest, because when I started doing this vest, Star Wars patches were the ones I had the most of. I'd actually bought a whole load in Japan, so we've got lots of these small sort of Empire Strikes Back and Star Warsy logo ones. There's a Planet Hoth one there. So this is possibly the most Star Wars themed of all of the nerd vests. And there's also a fair amount of badges and pins. But the problem I have with badges is they tend to get caught on things, and I've actually lost a few badges over the years. Things just sort of catch on bags, or if you sit down they'll sort of ping off, and so I'm trying to avoid putting too many badges on. Obviously I've got quite a lot of badges on this, but they do tend to get lost. You can actually see I had one on the collar here. I don't know where it went. It obviously got caught on something and has just sort of fallen off. I can't actually even remember what that was. I think it might have been a little V badge. So it's a shame when that happens. So I'm trying to avoid those and put more patches on, because patches you sew on and there's much less likelihood of them falling off. But obviously badges and pins are pretty cool, so I will be having some of them on here. So as I said, this is nerd vest number one, and I want to replace that missing pin that was there with one from Dan Larson. He actually gave me two, as you can see here. So we've got one wearing the helmet, the skull wearing the helmet, and another one with a helmet with a little sort of antenna sticking up to look a little bit like Boba Fett, I'm guessing. I'm going to go for this one just because I can see that little bit sticking up there is going to get caught, and I've already lost one pin off there. I don't want to lose another, especially not a Secret Galaxy one. So I'm going to use this pin because I think it will sit really quite nicely. It also complements the pin that I have on the right side here, which is one of the cubes from Terrahawks. So let's take this pin off, and let's see if we can push it through the fabric. The fabric on these vests is pretty thick. These are Levi's denim jackets that I've cut the sleeves off, and yeah, the fabric is pretty thick, so it takes a little bit of a push to get them through, and hopefully that will pin on really nicely. I always do a little test as well to make sure that they are pinned on firmly. I don't think that one is going anyway, so there we go. That is the first new pin on nerd vest number one. So this is Nerd Vest number 2, and this is a vest that I want to do some changes on. The back of it has a fair amount of patches, and I really like the sort of layout of this, but there's one patch that I find quite annoying, which is actually this Transformers one. This was one that I got in a sort of a blind bag. I bought some Transformers blind bags. I think they were from Revenge of the Fallen or something like that, the movie, but the patch is really thick. Most of these patches are quite thin, but for some reason this one is a really thick patch, and it's just quite uncomfortable. It makes the jacket sort of dig in at the back. So I'm going to replace this with the Treasures for Trigger patch. I think that will look really nice if it just sits there. And luckily on this patch I didn't iron it on. A lot of the patches that you get have an iron-on sort of glue on them, so you can iron them on. I don't find that glue works particularly well. Often you'll find that the patches end up sort of peeling up, and you end up having to sort of re-sew them back on to get them to stay in place. So I don't often use the iron-on sort of part of the patches anymore. I did on version 1 of the jacket, and I sort of learnt my lessons. So now I tend to always sew the patches on, which was lucky because I definitely sewed this one on. So I'm actually going to have to undo all of the sewing that I did, just cut the thread and take that one off, and then I can sew that one back in its place, and I think that will look a whole lot nicer. And this is a much nicer patch. It's much thinner, and it's not going to cause me any issues. So but let's remove this patch and we'll sew on the replacement one from Phil, and as I say, I think that will look a whole lot better. And that's what I like about these jackets. I'm sort of evolving them every time I wear them. I sort of find things that I like and find things that I don't like, and that's just the fun of having the jacket. You sort of change things as you go on. Most of the jackets don't have any sort of repetition in them. I think this is the only jacket that does, because I've got 2 of these Bantha Tracks patches. I really like that patch. I've actually put it on version 3 of the jacket as well, but that may change in time. If I get a patch that fits that space, I might take that one off as well. But for now, let's replace this Decepticon logo with the Treasures for Trigger patch. And there we go, that's the patch all sewed on. Looks really rather nice. That took about 10 minutes to do. Obviously, if you want to do the iron-on method, you can. This actual patch didn't have any of the iron-on material. I just find the sewing method works so much better. It makes the patch a lot more sort of firmly attached to the jacket, and you're less likely to sort of catch the edges and actually sort of tear the patch off. So for me, that is my preferred method, even though it does take a little bit more time. And the patch I removed is going to go back in my bag of spare patches that I might use in future. It's just a little bit too thick, this one, so it didn't work on this jacket, but it may work on something else in future. While I've got Vest Mark II on the desk, I'm going to swap out one of these other badges as well. This is a fairly cheaply produced little badge. I've got a few of them dotted around my jackets. The prints on them aren't great, so they tend to fade. They also go quite rusty. So I thought I would swap this one out with another of the Secret Galaxy pins. I think that will look rather nice there. So let's just quickly replace this one. These are just standard pin badges, and they can be a bit awkward to sort of get onto the jacket just because the fabric is so thick. So let me just undo that, see if I can actually get this pin to come out. No, this is a bit awkward. There you go, got that one off. So you can see this is just a sort of cheaply produced modern badge. They're quite good as fillers, but they're not the greatest of quality. So there you go, this next Secret Galaxy badge. Let's get that one out of the little baggie, and we'll pin that one on. Just like that. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Right, let's move on to the next jacket. So this is Nerd Vest number 3, and it's my most recent vest. And it's probably the one that's still got the most amount of space on it. There's still lots of little gaps around, especially on the front, which is where I'm hoping to use some of the smaller patches that I bought. But on the back, I've got one space left at the bottom here, which I think will look pretty nice if I put that Return of the Jedi patch. It could be I actually remove that Bantha Tracks patch, because that's the one I say is a duplicate. I've already got one of those on the other vest, so I could put it there, but I'm not sure about 2 black patches together. So for now, I'm going to put the Return of the Jedi patch underneath it, I think that looks quite nice. You've got a nice sort of a stripe down the back. So let's get that one sewn on. This again doesn't have any of the iron-on material, so I will just sew this one on by hand. I'm just going to pin it in place to make sure it's in the right position, and then get a needle and thread out and sew it on. It'll take about 10 minutes, the same sort of time it took me to do the first patch. And there we go, that is that patch sewn on. As I say, I may come back to this and move them around. That's what I like doing with these jackets. There's no sort of final position on anything. Sometimes I come and sort of see a patch and I think, well, actually that would look better over there when I've got a new patch that I want to put on. So things do move around, and that is the advantage of sewing them on. You can just unpick all of the sewing, move it and sew it back on. The insides tend to look a little bit sort of scruffy, but no one sees the inside of the vest, so it's only the outside you have to worry about. Let's now turn this over and we'll sort out some of the iron-on patches that I have. Right, although I've been talking about sewing patches on, I'm actually going to iron both of these patches on. These both come from Japan, and I know the iron-on sort of part of them works particularly well. And there are a couple of spots on this vest that are just going to be too awkward to sew onto. One is the pocket. I've got a couple of badges on these pockets, and I want to replace one of those with one of these iron-on patches, and it's going to be really awkward to try and sew that on, sewing inside a pocket. So I think the iron-on method will work best. I really like this little patch here. So this is the sort of Rebel insignia. And I think that's going to look much better on that pocket. So let's do a quick test fitting. Take this out of the packet. Oh, I can see it's actually a sticky on and iron on by the look of it. I'll just double check the instructions. I'll get some translations on that. But we can stick it on, and then it looks like we have to iron it on as well. So I think that one will go there. Let's remove that badge and see what that looks like. This is another Japanese badge I've picked up actually on a last trip that I went to Tokyo on. This is a Gatchaman patch. But I reckon that will look much nicer there. And then I've also got a little gap here, which is normally too small for patches. Most patches tend to be quite large, like this one here, and so it's nice to have smaller patches on the front, and I think it'd be quite nice to have a little patch down the bottom there. So that's where this R2-D2 is going to go. So let's just take that out of the packet and see what that looks like. So I think that just there at the front will be quite nice. On the back I do have a C3PO, you can see that there, so I think this little one there will be quite fitting. So we've got R2-D2 on the front and C3PO on the back. So I'm just going to double check these instructions with some translation tools and see what it says, but I'm hoping we can actually just iron that on as well. Maybe it is just stick on, but I don't think stick on will stick quite firmly enough, so let me double check. Okay, so here are the instructions, and I've got Google Translate on my phone, so let's just see what it says. Okay, it says it is a sticker, but it's also available to use as an iron-on. I've got to get the iron to 140 to 150 degrees C for 25 to 30 seconds, so absolutely perfect. So we can just place these as and where we want, and that's why the sticker part is quite useful. So I can take the backing off, and I'm going to place that one just at the bottom there. I think that will look quite nice, just sort of at the edge of the jacket. And then the Rebel insignia here, I want to put right in the middle of that pocket. So take that off as well and just line that up like that. That looks great. Right, let's get the iron out. Those are now both ironed on. I'm really happy with how they're looking. So I've got the little R2 there, the Rebel insignia there, but I realised once I was ironing that on, I've actually already got a Rebel insignia there as a pin on the collar. So I'm going to replace that one with one of these. This is a vintage Transformers Autobot badge that I just happen to have. So I think that will look much nicer there and sort of matches them with the Raphael Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan club badge I've got on the other side. So let's swap that one out. And I think that's probably it. I do still have this badge, but it just feels a bit heavy and I'm not quite sure where to put it. So I'm going to have to carry on thinking about that one for the moment. But otherwise, I think the upgrades are looking a whole lot better. So there we go, that's it for the updates, I think, this time on the Nerd Vest. I really like all three of them, and it's always a hard choice which one I wear. The first one is probably my favourite still, just because that was the one that I sort of started with, but I have to say I wear all of them equally, and it's nice always to add new badges, and I don't think any of these are ever going to be sort of fully done. I keep coming back to them, I keep changing badges, I keep changing the position of patches. There's never going to be a sort of a finally finished version of them. They are always going to be a work in progress, and as I get given new badges and new patches, or as I find new badges and new patches, those will be added, and maybe in time I do need to make myself a fourth Nerd Vest, but for the moment I'm happy with these three, and as you can see I keep working on them, I keep changing them, and there's still a fair amount of space. I don't really want to overfill these jackets. I think you can possibly overfill them, put too many patches on, and then it just becomes a blur of patches and colours. What I want is to sort of curate them so they always have a bit of meaning, and there's no sort of two jackets exactly the same, but every patch, as I say, means something to me, and every badge means something to me, or means something to the channel, or something that I've fixed. So they are always a great reminder of what I do here on Toy Polloi and Toy Polloi 2, and they're always a great talking point as well. Every time I wear them to a toy fair or toy show, someone will come up to me and chat and point out a badge or point out a patch. So it's just a great way of starting conversations with people. There's always some patch that someone will recognise or remember from the past. So hopefully this video has been of interest to you. If it has, then make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you've really enjoyed it, why not head on over to my main channel Toy Polloi and subscribe there as well. And thanks for watching.